So I'm just finishing up my 18th year in the lawn care business. It's been a great ride. I'm not quitting. I want to keep going. But I want to share with you some things that I've learned for the lawn care industry. I got 10 different tips here, 10 different lessons that I've learned from being in the lawn care business. Hopefully this will be encouragement to most of you, maybe give you some things to think about. So the first thing I want to talk about is when you're in the lawn care business, it can be easy to compare yourself to others. So I want to say, number one is just be yourself. Understand who you are. We each have different giftings, different skills, we have different personality, we have different background experiences. And those things can help shape how you are successful, or maybe not so, in the lawn care industry. So if you're always looking over your shoulder and being jealous of somebody else the way they did it, or it doesn't mean you can't learn from people, but there's a difference in learning from somebody and always thinking, you know, why can't I ever catch a break like that person or this person? So learn from them, but don't be jealous, and make sure that you're true to who you are and the way that you're created. Second point along those same lines is there is more than one way to go about things. And what I mean by that is, you know, for me, and this goes along with point number one, who I am. I work solo, and I have a methodology to the way I approach things. And there's certain accounts that make sense for me. There's certain ones that don't make sense. I have a strategy. There's some advantages, obviously, of working solo. There's certainly some disadvantages. Advantages being, obviously, I can cut down on some of the stress of having to manage employees. Disadvantage being that I don't have a lot of help. And if, you know, something were to happen to me, then that would obviously be a big blow to the business. So you got to think through those, but just understand that there is more than one way to go about lawn care. There's people that can do cheaper prices and higher volume. There's ones that can do more expensive work and lower volume. Some go very broad, some kind of stay in a narrow area. Some offer a diversification of different skills and different services, while others don't. There's more than one way to go about it. I want to mention that today's video is sponsored by my friends at Graham Spray Equipment. You see my 400-gallon Graham spray rig. I run a weed control and fertilization business in Alabama. If you need a spray rig for your business, want to get a weed control and fertilization, then go to grahamse.com or give those guys a call. It's clouding up here. If it starts raining, we may have to finish the rest of the video indoors, which is fine, or possibly on the front porch. The third thing I want to say as far as the lawn care business goes is you need to have a plan to solve winter. Now, winter is sometimes great for some people. They're able to figure it out, maybe make more money in the winter than they do in the summer. For others, winter can be a struggle, a slow season that can be really difficult. So I would have some sort of plan of how am I going to make money in the winter months, because if you're not able to figure that out, it can be a real strain on your business. The fourth thing I would say is to seek higher margins when you're in the lawn care business. Now, I think a lot of people, that's what I did. I started off mowing grass, and that was great. Some people do that. That's what they do the whole time, and there's nothing wrong with that. But even in that, there's higher margins and lower margin kind of work. For me, I switched over to weed control and fertilization, and that's been a good move for me. But I think it's worth evaluating once you get into the business, or maybe even before you get into business. But you say, you know what? I sure am working hard. Is there a better approach to what I'm doing? Could I be doing something a little bit different to make more money? Is there a different service? Not that you're necessarily trying to be greedy, but what I guess I'm trying to get you to avoid is just saying, well, I'm just going to mow yards for $50 and take the winters off, and that's going to work great for the next 30 years. You know, I don't think that's a great plan. And so sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and you got to get that steady income coming. But once you get that going, then you can kind of start to be strategic of like, well, what if I added this service, or what if I diversified over here, or what if I just changed altogether? You know, for me, like I said, I went from mowing to I don't mow at all anymore except my own yard, and started doing weed control. It doesn't have to be that. I'm just saying, thinking through it strategically and figuring out how to reach higher margins, whether you're mowing grass or doing something else. I'm going on the porch. It's starting to rain. The fifth thing I wanted to mention was about equipment, just using that wisely. I think people can be intimidated by equipment, especially when, again, going back to number one, you start comparing yourself with other people, and you say, oh wow, look at their unbelievable setup and all that, which, hey, listen, I want to say this in a positive and negative way. Like, Equipment's great. You know, I like more equipment and I love working with equipment versus manual labor. But oftentimes you can get started with very little equipment, and even if you were like doing landscaping, you had to like rent some equipment, it's not the end of the world. So don't let the equipment hold you back, but I would make equipment purchases wisely, meaning by that, make sure that you have a really high chance of getting a good ROI on that piece of equipment before you just go buy it because you think you need it. Have a plan, how you're going to use it. Yes, there's going to be a demand, and I'm going to be able to pay for this thing over and over again. Now, I've said this before on this video, and yeah, they sponsored the channel, but Graham spray equipment, my Graham spray rig, I don't think it's anywhere close. There's been no piece of lawn equipment I've owned that has got me more of an ROI than that Graham spray rig on the back of my truck. Number 6, and this is where it has to come in with being a little bit of a business person if you're new and you're trying to get into it, or maybe you're not, but cash flow, and that's a big deal. Okay, so it can be tight sometimes, especially if you hadn't figured out the winter income equation yet, and you don't have much income coming in the winter, and then cash flow becomes a problem, and then it starts making you have to make some tough decisions for you. You might take on more debt and get more overhead, you know, that can snowball and become a problem. So cash flow is important. One of the things that I do that helps with that is I will send a prepay letter out to my customers. I do, again, weed control and fertilization on the last treatment of the year, which is typically in November. I will leave a prepay letter for the following year, and I tell them it's due by December 31st. And what that does is about 20 to 25% of my customers will prepay for the year. I give them a 5% discount for doing so. That gives me a lot of cash flow moving into the next year, where I'm starting ahead of the game instead of behind the game. Now, I can't just go spend all that on Christmas presents. You know, I got to be wise and make sure that I'm using that for the advantage of the business. The 7th thing is saving money. If you start to have some success and you start to spend the money that you're making, not that you can't enjoy some success, I'm not saying that, but if all of a sudden everything gets upgraded, your lifestyle gets upgraded, and the equipment that you were using, it was perfectly fine, now it gets upgraded to much more expensive equipment that's not necessarily bringing you any more ROI, then again, you could be ultimately going backwards. I think for business, there's a lot of ways to judge the success of business. I don't think it's just money, but ultimately we want to look at the profit. That's certainly one. So if you're making more money but spending more money, again, it could put you going backwards a little bit because of some bad financial decisions. So cash flow is a big deal, and saving helps you in a couple ways. Saving can help you in case you have a tough year or something happens. Also could take some of the stress off the business later and even help you have an exit plan one day if you get tired of doing lawn care. The 8th thing I want to mention is adapting, and what I mean by that is, you know, sometimes things change. Your market might be a little bit different than it used to be. There might be a new competitor come in and buy out somebody that's real aggressive on marketing. There might be a big competitor that leaves, and that creates an opportunity for you. But being able to adapt, and I think this takes evaluation, sitting down, looking at your business at least once a year. I mean, I say that just kind of laughably almost. Like once a year is really not enough. I try to constantly be thinking of like, well, is there something else I could do? But don't start something year 1 and like me, year 18, just thinking, I just kept doing the same thing. It wasn't working very well, but I just kept doing it. You know, so understand that you're gonna have to adjust sometimes if it's not working as well as it used to. The 9th thing I've learned in the lawn care business, it is a good business. I don't regret being in the lawn care business. I'm excited about moving forward, but it's not so profitable usually for mowing and weed control, things like that, that the route density is not super important. To me, one of the advantages of my business is I have a pretty dense route, which helps me. Now, there's some exceptions. If I was doing real high-end landscaping jobs, obviously you can travel a little further for those. You don't have to be super efficient as far as having multiple customers in the same neighborhood. For the more basic services, it is somewhat of a numbers game, and the tighter the route you have is very helpful in making you more profitable in your business. And the 10th thing, I think maybe this is the most important, I don't know, but I would evaluate whether you're actually enjoying. I just said, yeah, I'm still enjoying the lawn care business. I'm not saying that there's nothing I would rather do, but I honestly can't think of a lot of people that I know that I would switch jobs with than what I get to do. But that also came with some decisions I made. You know, I kind of keep my business at a manageable level. If I feel like I'm getting too big or too stressful, you know, I'll cut back on some things to try to free up and try to give me a little bit of a work-life balance there to make sure I'm enjoying my work and it's not burdensome. Now that also, you know, goes along with trying to make money, so there's a balance there. I got to make money. At the same time, I'm not out here trying to just be miserable and punish myself to where I don't enjoy it. And I would say take an evaluation of yourself and see, am I close to getting burned out? Do I need to make some changes? So happy to report that I'm probably more excited about the lawn care business right now than I was early on in the first few years in the industry, and I'm excited to say that. Thanks for watching. Hope this is encouragement to you. If you want to get in weed control and fertilization like me, there's resources over at lawncarelife.com. There's a video course that a lot of people are taking advantage of. It's called the Weed Control and Fertilization Academy. There is a coupon code if you sign up for the email list that's on the top of the website. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in the next video.